What is up, Packers fans? Happy Saturday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Of course, you can follow the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, give those 5-star reviews, do everything you can to support the channel. Always appreciate that. Shout out to our brand new Pack-A-Day Podcast members, Alex Strossen and Ryan Kitzhaber. Appreciate you guys signing up. Speaking of Pack-A-Day Podcast memberships, I promise you guys a new members only video, and I did not come through for you. The reason being is I did record said video, and said video did not save for some reason and disappeared into the ether, never to be heard by a human soul. Very sad and disappointing. I'm going to try to record that one today on Saturday, but I will get to it in the very near future. I promise you. Unfortunately, ran out of time on Friday to record it again, but I promise you it is on its way. So if you haven't yet become a Pack-A-Day Podcast member, still plenty of time to do so, and that new members only episode is coming up very, very soon. I promise you on that. And of course, members only Q&A went off on Friday without a hitch. That was fantastic. Ton of fun at that. And we'll do those again every single week moving forward as well. We are coming to a very near conclusion with our deep dives on the actual rookie class. It's crazy that we've gotten through the vast majority of them already. Kitan Oladapo today, Travis Glover, Michael Pratt, Kalen King. Then we will do some undrafted stuff, probably an offensive version and a defensive version, but it is going to be done before you know it. Sad. I love doing these. My favorite thing to do every single year is kind of go through these rookies, highlight the highlights, go over the lowlights, and kind of go over what they need to work on, what they can bring to Green Bay. And it's just, it's certainly a labor of love and something that I can't get enough of and really enjoy doing. So with that being said, let's do it. Let's talk about Kitan Oladapo, who is a really fun safety prospect, 6'2", 216-pound safety out of Oregon State. A sixth-year senior. Yes, you heard that correct. A sixth-year senior. Yet he is still only 23 years old, but only for now. He will turn 24 in October. So I wouldn't necessarily say that he's like overaged. Like this is like aggressively, again, in the Brandon Whedon sort of territory. But 24 in the year that he's drafted is always going to be sort of that fringe. At least he's still 23 right now and doesn't turn 24 until October. But he will be a little bit on the older side when it comes to draft prospects. 32 3/8 inch arms and 9 1/4 inch hands is where he stands overall. A little bit, it's funny, not probably like average size arms. I'll just put it that way, and solid size hands. No major concerns here. No major, bonus here of like super wide wingspan or anything like that. Just solid overall metrics for both arm length and hand size. All right, statistically, again, he's a 6-year senior. He played in 5 seasons, mostly played in 4, but I'll just go over the last couple seasons here. 2022, he had 80 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, no forced fumbles, 6 pass breakups, and 0 INTs. In 2023, he had 74 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 10 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. In his career at Oregon State, he did stay there the entire time, 248 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 27 pass breakups, and 3 total interceptions. All right, how about how he was targeted in coverage? And this is again per PFF. In 2023, he was targeted 36 times, gave up 21 completions, a 58.3% completion percentage, so that's really good. 212 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, a 61.3 passer rating, and only 1 penalty. So extremely good in coverage in 2023. In 2022, he was targeted 37 times, gave up 23 completions, 62.2% completion percentage, 263 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 4 pass breakups, a 92.5 rating, and 2 penalties. He did struggle a little bit more in pass coverage earlier in his career. It's something that he's really worked on, and you can tell he's improved upon it. In his career, 74 completions on 122 targets, 60.7% completion percentage, 837 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3 picks, 19 pass breakups, a 92.8 passer rating, and 6 total penalties. But like I said, last couple years, much improved, and only a 61.3 passer rating when targeted on 36 occasions in 2023. As far as missed tackle percentage, something that we've talked about, probably not in the most glowing fashion for some of these Packer prospects so far. 2023, he had a 12.1% missed tackle percentage. In 2022, he had an 8.4% missed tackle percentage. And for his career, 11.9%. Nothing egregious here. Definitely some things from a tackling standpoint he can clean up. We'll talk about that. But we're talking about within a reasonable margin of error here. And that 8.4% was really, really good in 2022. Relative athletic score at strong safety, he had an 8.63 relative athletic score, did not do agility testing. Remember, he did break his toe during some of the testing at the combine, still did some of his testing at his pro day as well. The broken toe could have been a piece of the not doing the agility testing. It also very easily could have been strategic because some of the change of direction, especially as you're a bigger, taller, heavier safety, it's probably not going to go super well in the 3-cone and the short shuttle. So that could have been a little strategic, but without those drills in, he had a 8.63 relative athletic score, 91st percentile in height, 90th percentile in weight, 53rd percentile in the bench press, 76th percentile in the vertical jump, 44th percentile in the broad jump, and 72nd percentile in the 40-yard dash with a 4.58 40. As far as his grades go, again, we can always talk about take or leave the PFF grades if you want. What I always like to see is, at least from PFF standards, did he show signs of improvement? And here was the big thing. He really did. In 2019, he only played 2 snaps, 61.7 grade. In 2020, had a 49.1 grade, so well below average on 244 snaps. In 2021, huge improvement to 73.6 grade on 838 snaps. 2022 took another step up, 79.9 grade on 778 snaps. And in 2023, another step, 88.3 grade on 789 snaps. So basically didn't play in 2019. 2020 had that 49.1 grade, then 73.6, 79.9, and 88.3, getting better year over year. And asked to do more, asked to be more of a leader, and continue to just improve all of the time at Oregon State, no matter what year you were talking about. So that was always great to see. And in total, played 2,651 defensive snaps. So a lot of experience under his belt. He also played 242 career special team snaps. You would have liked to have probably seen this more in that 400 range, given that he did spend a lot of time at Oregon State. He played 59 snaps in 2023 with a 66.4 special teams grade per PFF, but he had 0 coverage snaps in the last 2 years, meaning no punt coverage and no kick coverage, something I can almost guarantee you he will be asked to do this coming season for Green Bay. And he only has 31 total coverage snaps in his entire career at Oregon State. So that was a little bit surprising. 161 of his 242 special team snaps came on the field goal block team. So that was his primary usage. You would have liked to have seen him play a bit more on those coverage units. All right, let's go over his positives and some of the things that make him a really fun prospect. Number 1, his coverage ability on tight ends. This has the ability to be a true matchup piece for Jeff Hafley. One of the things that I love that Goody did in this draft is find different versions of players, different flavors of players at some of these positions, and just give Jeff Hafley a multitude of options. I think we are going to see Jeff Hafley be more of a mismatch defensive coordinator or a matchup defensive coordinator, however you want to view it, like Matt LaFleur is on the offensive side. Joe Barry was so much, we're going to have Carrington Valentine and Jair Alexander on the outside. Keyshawn's going to be in the slot. We're going to have our 2 deep safeties, 2 edge rushers, 2 interior defensive tackles, and 2 off-ball linebackers. And it's going to mostly stay the same. The names are going to mostly stay the same. The style of play is going to stay the same. And we're going to play our brand of football. We're going to do our thing. And we think we can just outplay you that way. Comes, to, I guess, terms that you can't do it that way. And it ends up costing Joe Barry his job, quite frankly. And with Jeff Hafley, I believe we are going to see more mixing and matching based on what Green Bay is trying to accomplish with their game plan, and more specifically, what they're trying to take away from the opposing team. And Xavier McKinney and Evan Williams and Javon Bullard and Anthony Johnson Jr. are all different types of safeties than what Kitan Oladapo is. But you've got somebody with really good size, with good straight line speed, that when you get him matched up with tight ends, he is a legitimate matchup piece there. And you could play him if you're playing a lot of George Kittle or Sam Laporta or Travis Kelce out in the slot. This is somebody that can match up with those type of players. Now, I am not saying in any way that Kitan Oladapo is a shutdown tight end artist. Like you're all of a sudden on Kitan Oladapo Island if you're a tight end. I'm not saying that. But a lot of these tight ends are true mismatch pieces for the offense. And it's really hard to find the right type of player to sort of stick with these guys. For example, are you going to put Keyshawn Nixon on it? Probably not. He doesn't have the size. He's just going to, if you go up against a 6'5" tight end, Nixon's what, 5'10"? That's just going to be a mismatch. Same if you go with a Jair Alexander. You're probably not playing Eric Stokes in the slot if one of those tight ends are in the slot. Are you going to go with Xavier McKinney? He doesn't have, he could probably do a little bit of that, to be honest, but I don't know that he's a complete total tight end mismatch piece or matchup piece. Evan Williams certainly is not. He's going to be a little bit undersized there. Javon Bullard's going to be a bit undersized there. Some of your linebackers you can certainly attempt, but usually you like more of a safety player if you can come up with one. And that's where Kitan Oladapo comes into play. He's got the size, the speed, the athleticism, the coverage, the ability to read coverages and know what he's supposed to do, or more specifically, understanding route concepts, I should say. He has all of that at his disposal. So again, I'm not saying he's going to shut down these tight ends, but he gives Jeff Hafley a true legitimate tight end matchup piece if he wants to use that. And he's also a box safety with a really unique profile. So many of these box safety types that are almost like shadowing as bigger linebackers or smaller linebackers, bigger safeties, they don't have quite the, what I would say is just athleticism of Kitan Oladapo. While he's not going to be a change of direction master, that's not going to be whatever, his total cup of tea. It's not brutal. I think he can hang a little bit in that regard, but he's got good speed. He's got good size, and you can use him in a variety of different ways. He came into college as a cornerback, moved to a safety. Maybe there's some linebacker versatility there for him as well, but you're going to be able to use him in a variety of different ways. And I think his athleticism and just his raw natural ability at that type of position is going to serve him incredibly well. He comes up to fill gaps in the run game aggressively. And that's something that you love to see. It sounds like Green Bay is going to play more with 8 guys in the box, but there are going to be times, I promise you, depending on the opponent that they go against, that they're going to keep more 2 high safeties. There are going to be times where it's important that you have safeties that can come up and aggressively fill those gaps because you're playing with a smaller box. And if that's the case, Kitan Oladapo has the ability to do that. Or even if he's playing as a box safety, and even if you have 8 players in the box, it's still important that you're coming up and filling those alleys and those running lanes before the running back has the ability to set you up and maybe cut back and get a big explosive gain out of it. So he comes up and attacks. It's aggressive, it's physical, and he's unafraid to go in there and make plays in the run game, which you love to see. Stop me if you've heard this before for any of these Packers defensive draft picks. He is an attacking downhill player. Another one. Another one. It's exactly what he is. He is, like I said, fearless. He's attacking. He is playing downhill. He plays fast. He fills the gaps. He's whatever you need him to do. He's another player that plays the screen game really well because he comes up aggressively and cuts off those alleyways. And it's just another player who, good blitzer on the outside. It's just attack. It's an attacking brand of football. And if you had any doubt whatsoever about what style Jeff Hafley wanted to play, well, we heard it in his initial press conference. We heard it again in the most recent press conference. And all the players that Goody's drafting for this style of defense are aggressive downhill attacking players. He has a type, he has a want and a desire to play this style of football. And Goody went shopping and got him the players that he needs to play this brand of football. And this is another Kitan Oladapo, very similar type in that attacking downhill style. And the other thing too here, really good straight line speed and takes really good angles to the football. And that's going to even be improved if he is playing more in the box. Like you don't have as far of an angle to go, but he can get to the outside. He can take that correct angle and just fill the gaps and alleyways that he needs to. He's just a solid overall run defender, attacking downhill player, and has all of that at his disposal. Next up, he rallies to the football and he does not give up on plays. There's a play where he chases down a huge, what should be touchdown run from, 20 yards behind, takes a good angle to it, and not only chases it down, but forces a fumble on the play as well. Like those are the type of plays that you want to see. And I talked about in the past where this Packers defense under Joe Barry a lot of times felt like 11 individuals doing their own thing. Not a lot of guys rallying to the football. There were times where it looked okay, but it didn't always look that way. And I think what we're hoping to see under this Jeff Hafley defense and with these players that do rally to the football, that play this attacking brand, that we're going to see a more cohesive unit, 11 guys playing together, but these guys coming up, rallying to the football. And if one guy does miss a tackle, which there are some guys that we've talked about that have had some tackling issues, there's another guy right there after it because all of these guys care about football. They're energetic, they're passionate, and they're all rallying to the football. And that's just going to make you a better defense overall. As I talked about, he's a very good blitzer. I wouldn't put him quite in that Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, even Evan Williams type category, but they can definitely use him that way. And with that fast, straight line attacking style, he's definitely going to get to the quarterback. Had a great play on Caleb Williams, had a plethora of other sacks as well. So you can definitely use him in that aspect. And he's another player. It's funny. I posted a play with Evan Williams where he came from depth and they played a little stunt game and he came inside and screamed down and I think made the sack on the quarterback. There's a picture perfect identical play for Kitan Oladapo lining up in the exact same spot. They do a little game up front. He comes right up the middle. And again, I think he made the sack or either that or had a pressure on the play, but it's almost a mirror image of it. And you can, again, tell very much that Green Bay had a type going into this draft. This is an interesting way to put this in the positive category, but he gave himself a chance against wide receivers in coverage. When you are a strong safety, more of a box safety type, you're not expected a ton, let's just be honest and real here, to go in the slot, motion out, and cover shifty slot wide receivers. That's not your usual job description. You don't want that big kind of bulky safety going out and covering your, Justin Jeffersons or enter whatever, shifty wide receiver that you want to put in the slot. That's not usually going to be a matchup that ends well for your big box safety. But he gives himself a real opportunity on these plays because he understands route concepts and he understands how to get to the football. He uses good technique and he uses kind of some tricks of the trade to keep himself involved in the play. Now, what happens a lot of the times is he stays engaged in the play and he's close enough. A lot of times it ends in a completion, but he's able to get them to the ground right away. That might sound like a loss, but in those type of positions, it kind of isn't. And what I mean by that is, again, you're not, as a defensive coordinator, you're not going into a play thinking, how do I get Kitan Oladapo on their unbelievable, shifty, fast slot wide receivers? That's not what you're doing. So how does it end up that way? Well, it ends up that way because you're disguising something, and it ends up that way because usually you're bringing pressure from somewhere else. Maybe you're bringing Keyshawn Nixon off the slot, so Kitan Oladapo has to drop down and cover that slot guy. And a lot of times what can happen is if you have a good quarterback who identifies that quickly, they're going to get it out to that player, make the quick read, and that player might just beat that box safety and he's going to be gone or he's going to make a big play out of it. With Oladapo, what ends up happening is he makes it contested or at least close enough where if it's not a perfect play, he's going to have the opportunity to make a play on the ball. But even if you do complete it, he's going to make that tackle right away. And that's the sort of, you feel a lot more comfortable calling that blitz if you have that player who can make those tackles on the back end. So that is something that I do think, I give him credit for, is a lot of safeties in his type of role can't stick with those wide receivers. He gives himself a chance by understanding the nuances of what their wide receivers are trying to do and having, again, some tricks of the trade on his end as well to stick with those players. He attacks the football, meaning we got a little bit of peanut punch stuff and rips at the ball. It didn't result in a ton of forced fumbles, but it was not for a lack of effort. He's definitely trying to rip that ball out, and hopefully over time that does result in maybe some more playmaking for Kitan Oladapo. He plays completely unafraid. He has a great confidence and a swagger about him, and he is not afraid to do anything that you ask him to do, whether it's coming up and making those stops in the run, blitzing, putting him on an island. He's up for the task, and he'll take any challenge that you give him. Team captain, where have we heard that before? That's another trend for this Packers draft class, but he was a team captain and has been known for his strong communication on the back end of the defense, which you love to hear and love to see. He has special teams potential. We talked about only the 242 career special team snaps. We talked about 0 coverage snaps in the last 2 years and only 31 snaps of coverage in his entire career. I don't really care. He projects as somebody that should be really, really good on coverage teams. And I would be willing to bet you Rich Bisaccia is going to use him in that role very quickly and throughout the course of the season. All right, last couple positives. The first one is versatility. It's not in the same way of Javon Bullard and Evan Williams, where you're thinking maybe, box safety, post safety, slot safety, or slot corner, whatever you want to call it, and maybe doing all those different sort of things. I don't think Oladapo has that same sort of ability specifically in the slot, but I do think he brings a couple other things to the table. I do think he's probably the best pure box safety out of maybe any of this group. I also think he does give you versatility where if you want to bring Xavier McKinney down and put Oladapo back as the last line of defense, Oladapo can handle that. There's no real question for me. He's also a really good fit in a two high safety system, so he gives that to you. And the other thing is, I actually think he could potentially play some linebacker in some certain situations as well. So it's maybe not that slot ability that Evan Williams and Javon Bullard might have, but Williams and Bullard aren't going to be that linebacker like type position. And I do actually think Oladapo could play a little bit of that as well. So he's a little bit different from the other two, but there's still some versatility there. And then last but not least, from a positive standpoint, just really good height, weight, speed. And we talk about height, weight, speed all the time. Again, he was 90th percentile in weight, 91st percentile in height, and was 72nd percentile in the 40-yard dash. That's a good mix overall for height, weight, speed at that safety position. Some of the change of direction, yes, you'd like to have a little bit better, but a lot of great experience with height, weight, speed for this type of player. Late 5th round in the draft. Again, a lot to like about this overall for Brian Gutekunst and company. All right, negatives. Where have you heard this before? Some tackling concerns. I talked about it. It's not anything here that's egregious. It's not anything that you're super concerned about. He just needs to play a little bit more under control. His missed tackles are due to over-aggressiveness. And this is the conversation of you'd rather have a player who is, playing 1,000,000 miles per hour and is overrunning some things and maybe playing a little too fast and a little too aggressive. And let's tone that back just a little bit. You'd rather have that than the guy that doesn't have that extra gear, isn't playing at that level. So I like this out of Oladapo. I think once he learns to play a little bit more under control, some of that tackling stuff will sort of fix itself. And again, the 8.2%, 8.4% missed tackle rate in 2022 shows that he's more than capable of being a sound tackler through the course of the season. But I do think there's a little bit to clean up there. Needs to get his head turned in coverage. He does a really nice job. When we talked about it, one of his strengths is covering tight ends. One of the issues that he has is he does not get his head turned and he plays the man. Now, to Oladapo's credit, he plays the man really well and he reads their eyes, he reads their hands, and when they put up their hands, he swipes down on it and breaks up a lot of plays that way. He does not panic. And what you see from so many defensive backs is when those hands go up and they just panic and and you see them tackle them and get penalties and it's ridiculous, right? Oladapo stays calm and confident, waits for the hands to go up, waits to see the eyes come big and the player go for the ball, and then he rips through it and breaks up the play. That's great. That's good. You don't hate that by any means, but you love to see him get that head turned and maybe make a few more plays on the ball more naturally, maybe get some more interceptions out of it, or maybe just more easily able to break up some of those plays and limit some potential pass interference penalties by if you are a little early, it's going to be an easy call because you haven't got your head turned. So he can definitely do a much better job of that. But I do like the fact, again, that he plays the man, plays the eyes, plays the hands, doesn't panic, and doesn't get a ton of calls because of it. Struggles with dynamic players in space. You take a box safety that's 6'2", 90th percentile or 91st percentile in weight, you're going to have some issues with dynamic players in space. But the more space you give him, which is why you don't necessarily want him playing a ton of post safety, and you get these more dynamic, whether it's just super fast players or twitchy players or guys that can juke in the open field, they will give Oladapo trouble. That change of direction becomes a little bit of an issue, and just that ability to stop, start, all of those things are on display. So you don't necessarily want to get him in a ton of those situations. And that goes to our next one, a little bit of the tight hips and the difficulty changing direction. It's fine. It's not catastrophic, but it's not high end either. And it's usually not going to be for this type of player, but it's just noteworthy here nonetheless. Deep speed is definitely a concern. players will just run past him. And again, I give him credit for being able to stick with wide receivers when given that opportunity, but you see him go against fast wide receivers and it's just the foot speed's not there. Now he's got a good long stride. He's got good straight line speed, but it's more those transitions going backwards and just kind of sticking with those guys. And if you see a 4-3, 4-4 guy, you're going to see them run right past Oladapo. So that's why you don't want to give him too many of those situations where he is matched up and having the ability or possibility of receivers just running past him. And next up, he lacks playmaking ability. 2,651 career defensive snaps, 3 interceptions total, and 2 forced fumbles. So 5 playmaking plays in 2,651 snaps. That's not enough. There were opportunities. There's almost like a comical play of him in the end zone where the quarterback literally just lofts him. It's like literally like throwing your kid toss, like that's like your 5-year-old toss where you just loft it to him really easily. So it's an easy catch. The quarterback throws a terrible ball. It's like not even on a line. It just kind of lofted to him and Oladapo's under it. There's nobody else around him. And he goes up to get it and just clanks off his hands. And they were up big at the time. They were up like 21-0. It didn't affect the game at all. Whatever. And I actually think he has good hands, but that was like a comical one. But there are opportunities there, and I'd like to see him just make more of those opportunities into turnover-worthy plays where they're actually taking advantage of it, taking the ball away, and giving the ball to the offense. So just some lack of playmaking there. And then last but not least, we do remember here, he does have the broken toe, and that's not going to affect him long-term. It sounds like he's hopeful that he's going to be available for training camp, but I always am a little bit weary of guys that come in injured because it puts him behind the 8 ball. You're not able to attend rookie mini camp the same way, or at least participate in it. He's attending, obviously, but not participating in it. OTAs and mini camps will go by without him being on the field. And then you hope he's ready for day 1 at training camp so he can get out there and start catching up. But if he's not, it just pushes things back even more. And there's always going to be some catch up there for Kitan Oladapo. So I always hate to see guys coming injured and miss some of the early parts of camp because they're so integral to getting that strong start with the defense or the offense or whatever position you're particularly playing. But in this case, Oladapo at safety. What can he bring to the Packers in 2024? The first thing, he's got to get over that broken toe, and he's got to find a way to get on the field, hopefully sooner rather than later, so he doesn't get too far behind. I do think he's a different piece than the rest of the safeties on this roster. I think you can use him against tight ends in coverage. I think you can use him in a hybrid safety linebacker role. And it's just, again, what does Jeff Hafley need for this particular game? Do you need a bigger safety that can cover some tight ends? Maybe be used as a blitzer, QB spy, and do a variety of different things and be used as a pure box safety. Do you need something like that? All right, well, now they have it. And Kitan Oladapo can give that to you. I think he's going to be a core special teams player. I actually think he and Xavier McKinney will work very well together. Both of them are great communicators. McKinney's more that pure post safety, and then Oladapo's that pure box safety. It's a little bit more of the tell. You're not probably going to rotate them as much. You're probably going to assume, McKinney's going to play 85, 90% in the post in those situations, but Oladapo can play back there a bit too. And I do actually think that they're a really fun tandem together if you ever do want to go in that direction. And then he's an energetic leader with really good communication skills. So my final thoughts here, first of all, recover from that toe injury, try to get in as quickly as possible and play catch up. 3 safeties in a draft is a lot, but if you are going to do it, you better have plans for them. And it's easy to see a plan here because all 3 of these safeties bring something different to the table. And that's what I love about giving Jeff Hafley all these unique pieces and let him be the, I don't even know what I want to say. The chemist that's putting all the chef that's putting all the ingredients together. That's the easiest one to do. I don't know where I was going with that other one, but the chef that's cooking with all the ingredients. Goody went shopping, got him all these unique ingredients. I don't know how many lame cliches I've used in the past week by doing these breakdowns. They're going to happen. They're just going to happen. So just live with it. Let me have it. It's 1:30 in the morning. I'm going to use some lame cliches, so stick with me. But it gives Jeff Hafley all these options is what I'm trying to say here. And he's going to have another one in Kitan Oladapo where they didn't really have this flavor on the roster, and now they do, and that's such a great thing. And I do believe that sort of similar to Tyron Hopper, sort of similar to Evan Williams, I think Oladapo will carve out a role, maybe some specific packages, and I do think that he does have starting potential down the road. Now, whether he reaches that potential, that's going to be up to the Packers and Kitan Oladapo. But I do legitimately believe that he has starting capabilities and he could develop into that type of player in maybe a year or two, which is always what you want as well. Regardless of what round you're picking in, you want these guys to be able to have a pathway and a progression to potentially starting in this league. And I think Oladapo has that. So another really interesting pick from Brian Gutekunst, another flavor for this defense, another potential weapon. Maybe I'm using that a little bit loosely here, but you understand, like another type of player that he didn't have before that he can use at his disposal for Jeff Hafley. And I think is going to be a player that will have some utilization on defense and probably a core special teamer right away for this Packers team. Like the pick, kudos to Goody for finding him late in the 5th round, and another player that's going to come in and add value, hopefully sooner rather than later. That's going to do it for me today. Shout out to our Hall of Fame and All-Pro members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Shea Bradad, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donna Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, David McCluskey, Donald Decker, Bremen, David Prendergast, Dan Miller, Alex Hwang, Arnaldo Espinoza, Michael Schipper. I'll get that members-only video to you soon, I promise. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.